Can I just do a roll call before we start? Just so that I can check I've
do a roll call.
Got everyone. Councillor Hodgins. I can't see. No. Councillor Shaw's present.
Present.
Councillor White.
Hold on.
Councillor White have just phoned me to say he's got a job logging in.
Okay. Councillor Shaw, yes, I can see you're present.
Thank you, Shall. Well, no, I want to say I am present, but I have to leave at 12 noon, I'm afraid. So it's just give you prior warning, okay?
I hope we're all joining you, Ron.
Thank you.
So Councillor White is still trying to get in. Councillor Aylesbury sent apologies. I can see Councillors Hussey, Ali, Ibrahim, Councillor Lister. I can't see. Oh, Councillor Lister's just joined.
She's there. She's there.
I can see Councillor Norton. Councillor Williams has given apologies. Councillor Colbrand, I can't see either. No. Then I can see Councillors Brown, Smith, Spencer, Thomas, Bradwick, Roberts, Evans, Jones, Jake, and Jarvie. And I've got apologies from Councillor Harries and Councillor Pickering. I think that's everyone. And then just for members' information, the officers that are present are Chris Barton, who's online, Hugh, Dowie, Rich, Alison, and Geraint in room 8, and Julie taking minutes.
Okay. We've had apologies, you say, right? Right, declaration of interest. Members of the Fire and Rescue Authority are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare both orally and in writing any personal or prejudicial interest in respect of matters contained in the agenda in accordance with the provision of the Local Government Act 2000, the Fire and Rescue Authority standing orders, and the Members' Code of Conduct. Any declarations of interest? None? No. What's going on in the box? Someone is ruffling a bit of paper.
Dear, sorry, can I mute everybody and then I'll unmute you?
All right.
There we are.
Any declaration of interest?
No, no one's raising their hand.
Right, okay. Then we go to item 3, which is the chairman's allowances. You'll have to wait a minute while I get into my main computer.
Sorry, Tudor, can I just go back to the declarations of interest a moment to say that
yes, you can. While I get back into this. Go on.
Officers are declaring an interest in agenda item 6.4 and will be leaving the meeting during that, and the Treasurer will be presenting the report. So if we could move that to the last item, that would be greatly appreciated because it will streamline the meeting.
All agree? Anyone against it? One as the last agenda. After agenda 8, I'll come. Okay.
Yes.
All agree?
Agree.
Thank you. Right, I now go to my announcements. Sadly, the passing of a firefighter, Ian Groves. It is with sadness that I must announce the passing of firefighter Ian Groves of Usk Fire Station on Saturday, the 4th of July, following a short illness. Our thoughts are with his family, friends, colleagues at this time. Our crew at Usk are providing support in Ian's family at this sad and difficult time. Can we please have a minute's silence, please? If you can all stand up now, you've been sitting down long enough. Please stand for 1 minute, and then I'll tell you when that minute is up. Thank you. I'll be sending a letter, obviously, on behalf of the Fire Authority to the family, just to let you know that. Okay, then we go to item 4, receive the minutes of the Fire and Rescue Authority meeting held on the 10th of February 2020. So, can I go through the minutes for accuracy first?
Yep.
Page 5, 6, 7, 8. So move and second.
Move.
Second.
Thank you. Right. All agree then to the minutes?
Yep.
Agree.
All agree? Thank you very much.
Yeah, can I just say, I think there was a typing error somewhere. It said Monmouth rather than Monmouthshire. That was all, Chairman.
All right.
You know, when you list the councils in one of them.
All right, we'll correct that, Louise. Okay. Much of okay. Then we go to the annual general meeting held on the 8th of June 2020, which is on page 9. Accuracy, page 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Someone move a true record?
I move that. Second.
Second.
Someone move on to accept the minutes as a true record?
I'll move.
All agree?
Second.
Thank you very much. Then we go to the Finance and Audit Performance Management Committee held on the 25th of November on page 17. Steve?
Yeah.
You moving it?
Yeah, if we can move that, please.
Pam, you
Second.
seconded?
Yes.
All those in favour then, please, that we note the minutes of the Finance and Audit Performance Committee. All please show. Anyone against? None. Thank you very much. Then we go to HR Qualities Committee meeting held on the 11th of November. It seems a lifetime ago. On page 23. Stu, you gonna move it, Stu? Is Sue here?
No.
I'll move, Chair.
You're moving it.
I second it.
Who else was present? Oh, Dilwyn, is it? You seconded it?
I'm seconding.
Right. Right. All agree we note the minutes then?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Then we go to the Local Pension and Board Committee held on the 20th of January 2020 on page 31. Steve?
Yes, Chair.
Steve Broderick? You moving it? Is that seconded? Who seconded? Val? Thank you. Right, agree we all note the minutes then? All agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Then we go to the Finance and Audit Performance Management Committee held on the 2nd of March on page 35. Steve?
If I can move that.
Steve?
Yeah, if I can
Is
move
that
that.
seconded?
I'll second it.
Right. All agree we note the minutes then?
Great.
No one against? Thank you very much. Item 5, update of above actions. Sally on page 41. Sally? You there, Sally?
Yeah, sorry, was I on mute?
Yes. I went on mute. Right.
Apologies. There's only the one update on the strategic performance indicator targets. Those were published on the website in accordance with the timeline. We're obviously just reviewing those in the light of COVID, see if there's any tweaks that we need to make to them.
All agree we note?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Then we go to item 6.1, ratification emergency decision. Sally, on page 4.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. This report is to ratify the emergency decisions that members took during the lockdown period. There are 5 different appendices, so a typo in that first line should read 5, and you had an additional appendix circulated last week, Appendix 5, in relation to the report to those charged with governance. It was attached to the original email out to members when they were asked to approve those. So the report seeks formal ratification of the granting of the emergency delegated powers, approval of the strategic equality plan, approval of the authority's pay policy, both of which went to HR and Equalities Committee prior to members' endorsement, approval of the firefighter pension discretions, which detailed in Appendix 4, that also went to the Pensions Board, and approval of the report to those charged with governance.
Anyone got any comments on that item?
No.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Val has a question.
Val.
Yeah. Yes, Chairman. I'm sorry, I can't find what I was referring to. It's just that I've got some scribbled notes here. Oh, I remember what it was. The Appendix 1, bullet point 3. Appendix 1, bullet. No, I wonder vaguely if we'd ever asked for additional funds, because the Treasurer has the authority to seek additional funding, and I presume that's done through yourself, Chairman, and the senior officers. Just wondered if we'd ever run over.
No, we haven't.
Always knew we were a good setup, Sally. Thank you.
Hang on a sec. Can I apologise? I got to go back to the chairman's announcements. It went a bit blank, all right? Sally? Sally?
Yes?
I got to go back to the chairman's announcements. I didn't finish it off.
Okay.
Once we had done a moment's silence, I went straight on to something else. The other item, we had a meeting, myself and you, with the Deputy Minister on the 25th of June. We discussed what's the background. I start again?
I'm just muting people.
All right. All right for to go?
Okay, fine to go.
All right. Can you still hear me, Sally?
Yes, everyone can hear you.
All right. Myself and the Chief met with the Deputy Minister on the 25th of June. We discussed how the service is responding to the national health emergency of COVID-19, the role of the firefighters and the Deputy Minister's ambitions for firefighters in Wales to undertake medical calls with the ambulance service, which he made very clear at the start of the year, and building safety and changes to the fire safety order following the tragedy of Grenville Towers. Hugh went through the fact on the up-to-date with COVID-19. I haven't sent a copy of the report, one report that the members have had. Who's that?
I think that's you, Tudor.
Is it?
No, hang on.
No, it's not me.
No, carry on.
I've sent a copy of the last report from Sally to it, just to show that we keep you members up to date. On the pay award salaries, Hugh, you had a meeting Friday afternoon, didn't you? Hugh?
Yeah, there was an employers' meeting to gauge the predicted or budgeted impact for pay that fire authorities have made going into this year. The pay award date for Grey Book firefighter staff should be the 1st of July. There's been very little communication, I guess, because the environment been working in between the Fire Brigade Union and the national employers. Those discussions now are ongoing. So the meeting on Friday was just seeking where fire authorities were with their budgeting for 2020-2021 regarding employees' pay, and there's further round of engagement and consultation with the national employers to conclude this week. And at the end of that, we should get a report, which I can then be able to circulate, if that's okay, Chair.
Any questions on that one? Because that's an important issue as far as we're concerned, but we're in the hands of NJC and the rest of them, unfortunately. I have asked the Deputy Minister, because when I spoke to her, I asked her could she give a feedback of the meeting, and I've now sent off another request, so I get that feedback. That's going off to Sally, isn't it? Sally?
Yes, it is.
Right, thank you for that. The other one was the Grenville, there's regulations coming out. Hugh, do you want to cover that point? Because you weren't very happy with the level that they were talking about.
Yeah, there was a Welsh Government statement on building safety. The consultation on the extension of the fire safety orders ongoing, and that's likely to be an England and Wales piece of legislation. But there were some statements in and around cladding on high-rise buildings, which stated 18 metres, but didn't pay any recognition to the building regs and the building regulations. So just brought that to the Deputy Minister's attention and expressed our concern that any flammable material on any building, irrespective of height, should not be permitted and is not permitted under building regulations. And the fact that we've still got buildings across South Wales which are still clad with material that they shouldn't be. Although remedial works is in place to be done. We are now 3 years post Grenfell and a tragedy of Grenfell, and it's sad to say that we've got about 9 buildings across South Wales that still got cladding on them that doesn't conform with building regulations.
Okay, thanks for that. The last item I've got is the service and COVID-19. As we know, the world today looks different from what it was 4 months ago. On behalf of the authority, I would like to thank you and each and every person in the service for their outstanding professionalism and dedication. We have seen low absences rates across the service, and long may this continue. We have been able to maintain our excellent operational response to a very difficult and demanding environment. The teamwork we have is second to none. Thank you for us all. I assume that you will agree as members that you endorse that statement. Do you all agree? Hello?
Agree with you.
Agree.
All agree? Thank you very much. That's the end of that one. Thank you. Right. We then go on to... We've done 45, haven't we, Sally, now?
No, we haven't done that one yet. We haven't taken a vote on it.
No, I thought we hadn't.
This was page 45, ratification of emergency decisions that members took during the lockdown period that were approved then, but just to get a formal fire authority minute. Right.
Can I ask now that... So we move that to recommendations, which is on there of 2.1 of items 2.11, 2.12, 2.13, 2.14, and 2.15. Someone move.
I move, Chair.
I'll second it.
Is that seconded? Yeah. All in favour, please show.
Tudor, sorry, can I just go through, because I can't see all the members because someone on camera. Can I just go through a vote, please?
What's that background all the time? Sorry, are you gonna go through the names again or not?
I will, please. Yes, if I can.
Yeah. Right, go then.
So, if you could just say whether you're in favour, against, or abstain. Councillor Alley.
Favour.
Councillor Bradwick. Councillor Bradwick.
Favour.
Councillor Brown.
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand.
In favour.
Councillor Davies.
All in favour.
Councillor Drake.
In favour.
Councillor Ibrahim.
In favour.
Councillor Evans.
In favour.
Councillor Hodgins.
In favour.
Councillor Hussey.
In favour.
Councillor Jarvie.
In favour.
Councillor Jones.
In favour.
Councillor Lister.
In favour.
Councillor Norton.
In favour.
Councillor Roberts.
In favour.
Councillor Shaw.
In favour.
Councillor Smith.
In favour.
Councillor Spencer.
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Thomas.
In favour.
And Councillor White. Has he managed to join us yet? No. Okay.
All right, unanimous then. Thank you for that.
Sorry, did you mention Councillor Coburn?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, I voted. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Right,
Thank
Sally.
you.
Right, we go to 6.2 now, the Treasury Management Strategy 2020-21. Chris?
Morning, members.
That's on page 155.
Hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
This report is similar to the last agenda item, Chair, in that we would have normally approved the Treasury Management Strategy for the financial year before the 31st of March 2020. This is the first of the Treasury Management reports for the year. This one effectively sets the strategy for the coming year. I suppose in summary, the only thing I want to say is there's no significant, in fact, there's no policy changes within this document whatsoever to put members' minds at ease that we're not actually recommending any significant changes in terms of our approach to Treasury management. There's a couple of tables, that's all in the report, that I just wanted to draw members' attention to. The first is on agenda page 165, which is the second table down. You'll see there's a little summary table there, which sets out some of the key Treasury management indicators, particularly to note are the second line from the bottom and the third line from the bottom. The capital financing reserve shows the extent to which we could borrow for our assets. You can see that's increasing from around about £42 million up to about £50 million. That reflects obviously our approved capital programme in that we do invest in assets, vehicles, property, so on. But the line above that shows our gross debt at the 31st of March each year, and you'll see that, broadly speaking, that remains unchanged through the period. That reflects the fact, of course, that we borrow money for capital resourcing, but we also repay debt as we go through each year as well. So there's no significant increase in debt for the authority within those plans. And the next table I just want to draw members' attention to is the following page, on page 166, and it's the second table on that page. And this is the ratio of financing cost to revenue streams. So it's how much of our revenue budget effectively goes towards meeting our capital financing costs. And you'll see that sort of bobbles along really between 6 and 7% over the period. Just to reassure members, in the past, as I always have done, that's sort of broadly in line with other public sector bodies. So there's, again, no particular concerns in that area around the approach. And then just one final thing in terms of the investment strategy of the authority, and again, I tend to say this every year, but just to reassure members again, where we do invest money, and this is generally surplus cash with our cash flow, we only put it with credit-worthy organisations, banks and so on. In terms of the way we operate, and the criteria for our investments remains the same. So it is always on the basis of security first, liquidity second, and only then do we think about the interest rate return on the investment that we can get. So it's all about the security of our investments. And that's all I want to say, Chair.
Oh, short and sweet, that was. Right, anyone got any questions to Chris? No questions?
Yes, Councillor Bell Smith.
Right, Val.
Find you and unmute you. Oh, you're unmuted.
Oh, I'm unmuted, yes.
You muted.
Just to satisfy my curiosity, Chris, there's a reference to the PFI scheme, and that's on page 161. The authority currently has a PFI asset of 4.9 million and a liability of 4.7 within the capital finance requirement. Do you know, when you read it out, it sounds different to reading it. But the authority, we've got an asset of 4.9, a liability of 4.7. So we've still got 4.7 to pay on that PFI. How many years have we got to go now to conclude?
I believe there's another 12 or so years to go on the scheme, Val, from memory. I wasn't around when it was signed up, but I believe that's the situation. It was a 25-year scheme, and I believe it was signed off in 2007, 8-ish, something like that, from memory. It's a quirk of the way the financing system works within local government. Effectively, when the scheme was devised, the accounting requirements for PFI were different, and what happened, in fact, was the PFI contractor built the asset. They would have financed it, and it would have been completely off our books, so there would have been no accounting entries with our books for it, other than paying for the use of the training centre. But the accounting arrangements changed a few years ago, and we now have to show the asset and the liability on our books. So yes, we will have to continue to pay the PFI contractor for the remaining period of the contract for the use of the centre, and that use includes an element of the cost of building it, obviously.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Val.
Yeah, there was another. Can I ask another question? And I can't hang. I wanted to know why you have government bonds somewhere. Somewhere in here, there is a reference to the new bonds that you can purchase, government bonds, as opposed to the other system whereby you could borrow money. Well, the money is still coming from the same source, the government and tax, isn't it? Am I clear? Sorry.
Yes, it is. I mean, the principle exists. The government lends money to a variety of public bodies in different ways, and you can take them out through normal Public Works Loans Board, which is what members will be familiar with mostly, is borrowing money from them. But equally, there is the option of now bonds at specific rates of interest and other vehicles which governments offer. But yeah, we can use them. I mean, it's unlikely we would go down that route, but it is a possibility that we can actually use those types of vehicles to invest and borrow as well.
What's the benefit? Why has the government done it?
It's not specific to us as a fire authority. I don't think. They just offer money in slightly different ways to facilitate different organisations accessing money through different routes. But you know, it just reflects the current marketplace. There are different organisations that issue bonds in different ways. I don't think there's a clear answer from me as to why they've chosen to offer those bonds.
No, I couldn't ask that, should I? No, thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you.
All right, Val. Anyone else got any questions?
Sorry, yes, Chair.
Dan?
Someone's saying yes. I can't see who it is.
Dan.
Thank you, Chair. A quick question on page 165. It mentions the changing of the main account from Barclays to Lloyds and commercial reasons being reason why. Are you able to go into any more detail?
It was a competitive tendering process, Dan. So the process was we opted our banking services for a limited number of years, and in accordance with European procurement arrangements, we retender the process. So it would effectively just be a more economically advantageous tender. So hence we swap banks. It's not something we try and do on a regular basis. Clearly, it's quite onerous to swap banks. It isn't your perhaps in the way that individuals now are able to swap banks, where you just press a button and everything goes across to the new bank. It's slightly more onerous for us in terms of all our different payment and receipts and income procedures. But it is a process we go through for economic value for money terms.
Thank you, Chris.
Right, Dan.
Councillor Brown's indicating.
Louise. Councillor Brown, yes.
It's just a follow-up question about PFI. When the period of the 12 years ends, you mentioned about paying for the use of and presumably the capital of. Once the 12 years is over, presumably there's no more PFI payments, and that's it. Presumably the fire authority then fully owns the training centre and there's no other payments to be made. Is that right?
I believe that's the case, but I'm maybe going to ask Sally that if she can remember what the terms of the contract were.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain that that's the case too, but I can double check on that.
Yeah,
can you confirm that, Sally? Will you confirm that and circulate the members?
Yeah.
I think people aren't very keen.
Can I come in here, Chair?
Right.
Can I come in here, Chair? It's Richie.
Oh, Richie, right. It's so dark, I can't make out which is which. You look like twins.
Please, okay. Please. All I was saying was at the end of that, although we retain ownership of the site, obviously there will be some costs in maintaining the site and providing staffing for the site. That's currently captured by Babcock's, the running costs. But while we own the site, there will be an uplift then in our cost of running it. Or the authority may determine. The authority may determine then to go back.
Have we got the answer, Rich, when this actually finishes? Is it 12 years or what?
I think it's 12 years, and we do retain ownership of the asset.
I know that, but all right, Sally, you come back with that information. I won't press you too
11
much.
years.
11
years, is it?
2031, and it was a 25-year design, build, finance and operate PFI, so it's very different than other PFI schemes at the time as well.
Yeah. Anyway, it's 11 years now. All right, Sally, we have no need to circulate now.
Thank you.
Anyone else got any questions on this report from Chris? Can I move recommendation 5.1? Was that seconded, please?
Yeah, I'll second it.
That's on page 156, the recommendation. Is that seconded?
Yeah, by me. Yeah.
Yeah, Councillor Evans seconded.
All those in favour?
Can I do a vote again, because I can't see everyone on screen.
Right, go through it.
Councillor Ali.
Favour.
Councillor Bradwick.
In favour.
Councillor Bradwick. Yeah. Councillor Brown.
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand.
In favour.
Councillor Davies.
I'm in favour.
Councillor Drake. Councillor Drake.
Muted. In favour.
Councillor Ibrahim.
In favour.
Councillor Evans.
In favour.
Councillor Hodgins.
In favour.
Councillor Hussey.
In favour.
Councillor Jarvie.
In favour.
Councillor Jones. Councillor Jones.
In favour.
You've got laryngitis.
Sorry, I'm getting terrible reverberation my end. Councillor Lister.
In favour.
Councillor Norton.
In favour.
Councillor Roberts.
In favour.
Councillor Shaw.
In favour.
Councillor Smith.
In favour.
Councillor Spencer.
In favour.
Councillor Thomas.
In favour.
And I noticed Councillor White joined us at the beginning of that item. But
I'm not too sure when I joined. So if I can make a comment or not, but what I heard of it, it sounded good, and I would say yes. But if I can't say yes, 'cause I missed half the presentation, then I won't comment.
But if you didn't sit in through the whole of it, I'll put you as a abstain on that one.
Okay, sorry, I didn't have problems, but I'm online now. Anyway, thank you.
All right.
Okay, that was unanimous for those that could vote.
Right, thank you for that. Then we go to item 6.3, Carbon Reduction Plan 2020, and that's on page 175. We got Geraint here to give our report.
I'm just going to mute everybody again. Okay, Geraint.
Thanks, Ali. Muted us as well then.
No, you're off.
Morning, members. The report is set out on page 175, the Carbon Reduction Plan. just to set the scene, I'm going to quickly run through a very short presentation, which I presented to our senior management team on our middle leader engagement day in the last couple of months, to sort of set the scene on why we sort of drafted a carbon reduction plan. So hopefully technology will work. Chris Barton's driving this from his end for me at the moment. Chris, are you able to share the screen? Was up on the screen.
He's muted.
I'm going to unmute him now. Bear with me. I've just got to find him on my screen.
I'm unmuted myself, Sal. I'm just trying to make sure that I've. Can members see that?
Yeah.
Bear with me while I try and. Has that worked?
It's gone.
Goes off, Chris.
Bear with me.
There he was, much better. Thanks, Rich. Sorry, chum.
Yeah, I've not done this from this machine, unfortunately.
Yeah, for some reason it doesn't like it, does it? When you do slideshow on this, it doesn't like it at all.
Can you just go to each slide one at a time, Chris? And see
I'll just try and bear with me while I.
You can't get on, can you? No, it's poor connection.
What island is that, Garage?
I don't know. What's the island?
What's the island?
It's a foot island.
Ah.
Island.
Can members see that?
Yeah, that's worked well.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. Okay. Will the slides change automatic now?
Well, you tell me, and I'll.
Have to go to the first slide then.
Whoop.
Yeah. So the reasons behind why we need to actually draft a carbon reduction plan. Obviously, 25 countries have declared climate emergency. In 2015, there was the Paris Agreement, which is a UN framework, and that set out a convention on climate change and reducing greenhouse gases. So obviously the Welsh Government have set their target for a carbon neutral by 2030. It also come under the remit and the actions needed under the Environment Wales Act 2016, and obviously all the areas set out within the Wellbeing of Future Generation Act. So that gives us the sort of background as to why we need to do something as a service. So next slide, Chris. The Prime Minister's Brexit update. So yeah, to set the scene again is just looking at some of the sort of areas of expenditure that we had, and using 2018-19 as a sort of base. We looked at some of the sort of biggest impacts that we have on the environment as a service. So if we go to the next one, Chris. So in just one financial year alone, this is how much paper that we bought into the service. So 2,300 reams of A4 paper, 162 of A3, 36,000 envelopes. So the list goes on. It's a considerable amount of paper that we go through as an organisation, sort of medium-sized organisation, within one financial year. That was. So just to sort of give an overall impression, if we were to just stack the A3 and A4 reams of paper on top of each other in one financial year, it obviously would dwarf Big Ben and would sort of be halfway up the height of the Eiffel Tower. So that just gives us a sort of visual representation of how much paper we go through in the printers each financial year. So then we looked at the next area. Then was obviously single-use plastics, and these are some of the areas that where we in one financial year, the amount of plastic that we use as a service. So 36,000 plastic cups, 85,000 plastic water bottles, and the various equipment that we fit and issue out as part of our community safety initiatives. They are all plastic components, mainly plastic items that are issued. And I just wanted to highlight, these to our officers, is showing that everything that we buy has that impact on the environment. To start the sort of the mindset of, can we look for alternative products to actually issue out as part of our community reduction initiatives. So again, that just gives a sort of graphical image of how much plastic we go through as a service in 1 year. And then obviously we got the impacts on our energy and fuel usage. So in 1 year, that's the electricity and gas usage, which equates to 1.8 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent. And then with the fleet, we go through 451,000 litres of diesel and 5,000 litres of petrol, so equating to 1.2 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent. And again, using the graphical sort of representation, that's the sort of what equates to 1 tonne of carbon dioxide equivalent. So it just gives us sort of an overall impression of, as a service, on what we are producing and what we're going through in just one financial year. So the next steps that we're doing as a plan is obviously to review our baseline data, see what our overall carbon footprint is, to work with our staff and the wider communities to sort of come up with a plan and talk about our impacts on the environment, to look at ways of allocating our budget and the resources to target some of the challenges that we've got, to publish the plan, which is what we're doing today, and within that we've got interim targets, and then overall to work with our staff around behavioural change to see what we can do to really make an impact on this. So thanks, Chris. So that sets the overall scene as to why we drafted a plan. The report just covers off again a bit more of that. The plan itself is set out on page 179. Really, the plan sets out what the Welsh Government ambition is to be carbon neutral by 2030, and then saying that as a service we are committed to reducing our carbon emissions. And within our strategic plan and our strategic theme, we've got protecting our environment as one of our key themes. Therefore, this plan is working towards that. So it sets out our ambition to reduce our carbon footprint, and there's various projects and schemes that we intend to sort of kick off and kickstart to tackle some of our challenges. Obviously, climate change has a big impact on us as a service, obviously on the services that we deliver. We've only got to look at the level of grass fires that we've had this year and in the previous couple of years, and the amount of flooding incidents that we've attended back at the beginning of this year alone, to realise the impact that climate change is having on us as a service. So therefore, as a community leader, I think it's only right and proper, using our outstanding reputation, that we have a significant role to play in this, and thereby having a plan to show that we are committed to it. We've already significantly reduced our energy consumption since 2011. Our electricity is down by 20%. Our gas consumption is down by 25%. But we'll continue to keep driving that down year on year and looking at ways of doing that. But I think energy consumption alone is not going to allow us to hit the target, so we've got to look at other ways of reducing our carbon footprint. So the main areas of focus which are set out in the plan is looking across our property portfolio of being far more energy efficient there, our fleet and travel, trying to be far more economical and making better use of travel plans. Technology, obviously making greater use of technology, and video conferencing being one of the key ones in the plan. Our procurement strategies, looking at the way we buy things and how we work with our supply chain to try and reduce impacts on carbon. Waste streams, reducing the amount of waste we produce and ensure that we maximise our recycling. And then the main one is working with our staff around behavioural change. So the plan sets a target for us to reduce our carbon footprint using 2018-19 as a base, to reduce by 2023 by 25%, and then ultimately by 2050 to fall in line with the rest of the government and sort of leading world authorities on this to reduce by 80%. So there's an action plan set out on page 189 of the report, and that gives sort of detailed schemes and projects that we plan to do in the next year or two. But obviously this is a live living document now, and we'll constantly be adding to that plan as and when schemes come up. And we plan to report this annually back to the Fire and Rescue Authority to show progress against the plan and show further commitment and further schemes going forward from there. So happy to take any questions from there, really.
Councillor Steve Evans indicated.
The first thing is, does all these changes come with any extra finances? And the second point is, if we're looking to do community safety with fire alarms and everything else, which are duly made of plastic, how are we going to look for alternatives to alter that for our residents in the community?
Yeah, the first one, it does, it sets out in the plan that there will be investment needed for some of these schemes. But obviously, a lot of the schemes where you put in place investment up front, they will deliver efficiency savings in the future going forward. Just one example where we fitted LED lighting in headquarters a couple of years ago. It came at a cost of about £80,000 to install. We generated savings of £50,000 year on year. So it's that upfront investor save type schemes that we'll be looking at. Not every scheme will have that level of savings, but obviously those are the ones that we look to target to get the best value for money out of the investment that we put in. On the second element, sorry, Steve, can you repeat the second part of the question?
What it is really that when you look at the fire alarm and everything else, they're all made of plastic. And if we're trying to reduce that whole thing, how are we going to change that to inform our residents that we need to change?
Yeah, it's working with our suppliers, working with all of our contractors on the supply chain, looking for alternative products. Asking them, working with them to see if they can look for alternative products in the construction of the items. Again, we don't expect changes to be made overnight, but as part of the longer term plan is working with our suppliers so that they've got a commitment to the carbon reduction as well.
Okay, I've got 4 people indicating. The order in which I saw them was Councillor Norton, then Councillor Shaw, Councillor Smith and Councillor Brown. Councillor Norton.
Thank you, Sally, and thank you, Chair. One question. In the report, it mentions looking at virtual meetings as a way we can reduce carbon footprint. Has the authority come up with a plan or commitment to keep online meetings as an option after COVID, or at very least hybrid meetings? So if you are having a physical meeting, but does it make environmental sense and time sense for someone to attend the meeting in person, they can still attend via Starleaf, for example?
Do you want me to pick this one up, Geraint?
Yes, please, Sal.
I'm assuming you're talking about fire authority meetings now, are you?
Well, fire authority meetings, but also there's meetings for staff and they have to travel a great distance. They are able to make it online, and that could obviously be safer as well. So all meetings.
Yeah, I mean, certainly staff meetings, we've got Starleaf in now as an organisation, so we will be looking to utilise that wherever possible. In relation to the fire authority meetings, the regulations at the moment expire in May of next year, which allow a variation to the previous legislation on remote attendance at meetings. Certainly the previous legislation didn't apply to fire authorities, and it also required at least 30% of members to be present at the venue to have with remote attendance as well. So you did need a number of members coming into the office. I know there's been various local government association surveys now to see whether there's an appetite for continuing with the new style of remote meetings. I think for us, obviously, the key issue will be enabling public attendance at remote meetings or at the venue, because that's still our problem area at the moment, hence why we record and put them out, which is in accordance with the regulations at the moment, but may not be going forward. So we may need to look at a different platform.
Thank you.
I think Councillor Shaw I had next, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sally. It's more of a comment, if I may. It's good to see this actually concretised and put into a report now. Do you have faith that the management plan will support it to the extent that all employees will be able to utilise this and embrace it?
Yeah, Councillor Shaw, the early engagement that I've done with staff, certainly the senior management team, were very receptive to this. The middle leaders, there was over 100 middle leaders in an engagement day that we run. And using that forum, we sort of gathered a lot of ideas in sort of coming up with the action plan. So there was really good feedback from that. I've done initial engagement with some stations. I've gone out and sat with watches on stations, and there seems to be a really good appetite for this. Especially with the younger cadre of officers that we have. Obviously, they get it. They've grown up with this type of environment. People like myself who've been in this work environment way longer than them, perhaps are new to it. But there's certainly an appetite for it across the workforce.
That's excellent. Thank you.
I've also noticed Councillor White wanted to come in as well. So next I've got Councillor Smith.
Oh, hello. No, turn myself off. Yes, please. In the action plan, Hugh, one of the proposals was to introduce an annual awards to recognise reward. Could you incorporate that into the Innovation Awards thing that runs all the time? There's a financial benefit, and it might encourage people to think creatively all the time through the year, rather than have another situation, another thing to set up. Referring to the meetings, I'm surprised. Yes, I personally this morning am profoundly grateful that we have a meeting this way. It's taken a long trip off me. It saved a lot of carbon for the environment. When the IT works, it's fine. And I'm surprised how you can build up a rapport so long as the system is working. But I do, Hugh, appreciate a hard copy alongside. I couldn't follow on a screen this agenda. So I benefit from this. It's a very nice quality production that you do, and I'm grateful for that. And there was one other thing that I always think when I'm at headquarters, I'd love to plant trees on the bank there. And I've got an awful lot of saplings I need to get rid of. So rather good quality ones, though. Yeah, and the other one was our water bottles. I haven't had mine yet. So, yes, the system this morning has certainly taken a lot of pressure off me, which I didn't really appreciate it could. So, yeah, and incorporating on that your action plan, bringing the proposals for climate change into the innovation proposals. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Smith, that's certainly something that we can incorporate into the innovation scheme and sort of, give it more provenance in terms of, looking for those type of schemes as part of the innovation awards. In the actual action plan itself, I think that was more designed around the annual award ceremony that we got. So anyone that comes up with a specific scheme ideas, we will recognise it and reward them as part of the annual ceremony that we have as well.
Yeah, because many years ago, some years ago, we had a lady who came forward with a remarkable scheme for not recycling but reusing clothing, which saved a substantial amount of money, and we made a special award and a special presentation for her, I think.
Yeah, and she's one of the key members of my team now, working on this in the background. So, yeah, she's excellent, and as I say, her ideas certainly sit alongside this plan and have worked well in terms of developing it. So it's So we can continue to use that asset to its fullest. In terms of the paper reports, obviously, the part of the presentation I did is looking at how we can reduce the amount of paper that we do produce. So again, it's tied in with how we do that through technology, I think, going forward. But at the moment, fully appreciate that it's the best solution that works for members at the moment. And in terms of the trees, you said we did produce the Biodiversity Plan, which members approved back in December. So that there's action plans set out there in terms of how we manage our estate, and certainly tree planting was one of the strategies there. And the final bit was about water bottles. All of our operational staff got issued them pre-COVID, and I think they started again last week issuing them to everyone else. So you should be with you soon.
I can manage without it, but it's just a thought it was there. Thanks, you.
I think next I had was Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Chairman and Sally. I was looking at page 188, and this goes through the sort of carbon reduction plans that says 2023 to reduce carbon emissions by 25%, 2030 to reduce by 50%, 2040 by 65%, and then 2050 reduce carbon emissions by 80%, starting with a baseline of 2018 to 19. I just wondered about the spacing of the different sort of targets and programs on this, because obviously this plan is 20 to 23, which is 3 years, and then obviously 23 to 2030 is 7 years, and then 2030 to 2040 is 10, and then 2040 to 2050 is 80%. So I was just wondering about the phasing of the targets within the time period that we've got. I mean, I understand, having a quick glance of the Environment Wales Act, which I was interesting to look at because I hadn't seen it before. It says that as you'd already stated, the Welsh ministers have got a target of 80% reduction of carbon units, carbon emissions, and I just wondered how about this phasing and why you decided on the particular phasing of it. Thank you.
Yeah, obviously this is the first plan that we've ever produced. So it is an initial 3-year plan. So it's to get that action plan up and running and to set some targets. We did have quite a bit of debate as to what level was the appropriate level to have the initial target. I'd set it a bit higher at first, but after some debate, I think it was agreed that an achievable target was 25% within the next 3 years. And obviously then in 10, the original set out is in 10-year increments really from 2020. So it's looking at plans across the public sector. I've tried to sort of gauge a level, what other services, other organisations are doing, and it's trying to sort of fall in line with other services, really.
Are there penalties for not reaching targets at all?
No.
No. Okay, thank you.
Not at the moment.
The other one I had indicate was Councillor Brown. Councillor White. And then Councillor Hussey afterwards.
You need to unmute yourself, David. Sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Many thanks for the report, and it's good to see the fire service has been embracing the environment issues, and that's welcomed by all members of the authority and staff. I think it's a brilliant idea and a way forward. Now, some of the things you've learned over the last few months, is about what we can do working from home and team meetings and things like that. You've mentioned home working, to be explored, but is there more scope now to look at home working further? Now we've learned through COVID, a lot of stuff, more staff can work from home. Although I do accept many of your staff can work from home, they've got to be in stations and all that. but would there be more emphasis now on working from home?
Yeah, Councillor White, I think when the plan was initially drafted, it was obviously pre-COVID, and it was very much an ambition to encourage and assist our staff in working from home. Obviously, by actual coincidence now, the majority of corporate staff have got the capacity and ability to work from home. And where, following government guidance, where they could work from home, they were working from home. So it's using that, using it to its fullest capacity going forward. However, we've got to recognise, the support functions that we do provide to our operational staff, and there are times where it is important for us to be in the workplace to provide our functions. But also, we recognise the importance of the culture of the organisation, and part of the culture is being here, being face to face with our colleagues. But obviously, in the current climate, we're working on a rota system at the moment, so a maximum capacity of 50% in headquarters that we're looking at. But longer term is certainly something that we plan to encourage our staff to be able to work from home on a regular basis, to support us in reducing our carbon footprint.
I've got Councillor Hussey, and I think Councillor Shaw wants to come back in as well.
Okay, thanks, Al. As you know, I did mention it before the lockdown. Would it be possible for members to have their pay slips electronically rather than an envelope and a piece of paper? It's easier for members to store this information, and it was saved also on paper plus postage. Thanks.
Yeah, I think from memory, payroll were looking into this. I think some of the complication arose because you didn't have remote access in to our intranet site where the core HR system works. But I suspect Alison's team can evaluate whether members can download an app now that they have a fire service email address to access electronic pay slips.
Sal, just to add, yes, I can look at this and pick this up with Kim and team.
Okay,
and I think Councillor Shaw wanted to come back in.
Yeah, thank you, Sally. Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it very brief. I just wondered if the next agenda item is an opportunity missed to incentivise a carbon reduction.
Sorry, but the lease scheme. Is it? I wouldn't say it's an opportunity missed. It's obviously something that will be considered, I think, as part of the scheme going forward. But I think you said to incentivise, is it? I think using the plan really as a published plan now as a way of encouraging people to be more considerate when they perhaps choosing their vehicles.
If I could, from an operational perspective, regrettably, technology does not. We haven't got the technology advances that meet our operational requirements. So the restrictions on battery vehicles and electric vehicles probably don't meet our ambition on size of service area that we've got as well to meet our operational demand. The tactical managers on operational rotas, I would say, at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, I agree. It doesn't meet at the moment, but we should be looking forward to say, right, is there any way we can incentivise people to make the right choice in terms of climate change? Not for this next agenda item now, maybe, but in the future. Thank you.
Okay, Rod. Did Wayne want to come in, Sally?
I can't see him at the
moment. I thought you mentioned his name, right? No one else want any questions or comments? Can I move recommendation 6.1? The members approve and adopt the carbon reduction plan 2020-23 attached.
Yeah,
move that. Is that seconded?
Yeah, go on.
Anyone against that?
Can I do a vote, Tudor, because I can't. There's lots who have got their cameras off. So Councillor Ali.
In favour.
Councillor Bradwick.
Sally, I think I'll have to abstain on this one because I kept on losing signal, so I didn't see Gail as part of his presentation. So I'll have to abstain on this one for clarity. Okay.
Okay. Councillor Brown.
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand.
In favour.
Councillor Davies.
In favour.
Councillor Drake.
In favour.
Councillor Ibrahim.
In favour.
Councillor Evans.
In favour.
Councillor Hodgins.
In favour.
Councillor Huss.
In favour.
Councillor Jarvie.
In favour.
Councillor Jones. Councillor Lister.
In favour.
Councillor Norton.
In favour.
Councillor Roberts.
In favour.
Councillor Shaw.
In favour.
Councillor Smith.
In favour.
Councillor Spencer.
In favour.
Councillor Thomas.
Favour.
And Councillor White.
In favour.
Thank you. That was unanimous.
Thank you for that. Can I go to item, we know not going to do 6.4, as you know, it's the end of the agenda. Can we go to 6.5 report on, sorry.
Yeah, I'm just going to unmute members again because there seems to be a lot of feedback today. Okay, item 6.5 on the agenda, page 201, is the report on the draft proposed strategic themes and objectives for next financial year. As members will be aware from the current strategic plan, 2020 to 2030, we've got 8 strategic themes in place. We're not proposing to change these with this review. They're obviously aligned to the current national framework for Wales, produced by Welsh Government, and our wellbeing goals. And those 8 themes are included at Appendix 1 at page 205. The key areas that will be changing can be found at pages 206 to 207, and that's our proposed objectives under each of the themes. This is for approval to do some pre-consultation work with our key stakeholders to refine the proposed objectives before we go out to the formal consultation over the summer-autumn period. Obviously, with COVID impacting at the moment, we have asked for some delegated authority to amend and refine the proposed objectives as a consequence of COVID as we learn more, and any changes that are necessary following our pre-consultation period before we go out with the formal statutory consultation, which may end up in a slight change to areas of focus. So it's really for members' views on those proposed objectives going forward.
Thank you, Sally. Anyone got any questions, any comments on that item?
No one is indicating.
No one?
No one's indicating, no.
Right. Can I?
Oh, Councillor, hang on. Councillor Brown is indicating.
Yeah, I just wondered on page 206 where it says responding to your emergency. It says respond effectively when you need us. I wondered in view of COVID whether it would be a good idea to say respond and adapt services effectively when you need us.
Yes, I think certainly respond effectively would include any form of emergency response that we needed to make, whether that needed to be adapted at the current time or not. Because even if we did need to adapt our response, we would still hope to respond effectively.
Yeah, okay, I just thought it would be helpful in relation to the current.
Okay. I'll make a note of that, and perhaps we can wait till we get some pre-consultation feedback as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
No one else is indicating no.
Recommendation 5.1. No. I move recommendation 5.
Yeah, happy with that.
Is it seconded?
Yeah, go on, I'll second that.
Right.
Okay,
We're
Councillor
going to do a roll
Ali.
one again.
Yeah, Councillor Ali. I can't hear you, Councillor Ali.
In favour.
In favour, thank you. Councillor Bradwick.
In favour.
Councillor Brown.
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand.
In favour.
Councillor Davies.
In favour.
Councillor Drake.
In favour.
Councillor Ibrahim.
In favour.
Councillor Evans.
In favour.
Councillor Hodgins.
In favour.
Councillor Hussey.
In favour.
Councillor Jarvie.
In favour.
Councillor Jones. Councillor Lister.
In favour.
Councillor Norton.
Favour.
Councillor Roberts.
In favour.
Councillor Shaw.
In favour.
Councillor Smith.
In favour.
Councillor Spencer.
In favour.
Councillor Thomas.
Favour.
And Councillor White.
In favour.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We go to item 7 now, reports for information. 7.1, final determination of the pension ombudsman in relation to the protected pension age, PPA, fire authority liability, and that's on page 211. And Alison, you're going to take us through that?
Alison, let me just mute and unmute you a minute.
Thank you, Chair. Members, this paper presents an update following the final determination reached by the Pensions Ombudsman in relation to protected pension age, and it concerns 3 individuals who retired in 2013. I'd probably like to draw your attention to paragraphs 1.5 and 2.3, which I think summarise succinctly the key issues arising out of this particular case. Essentially, the 3 individuals retired from their whole-time roles as firefighters, but continued in their roles as on-call firefighters. And the 3 individuals took a case to the Ombudsman that stated that their paperwork as part of their pensions pack, so their retirement pack, did not specifically address the point about the tax liability that they would incur should they continue in their on-call roles directly after retirement as a whole-time firefighter. So what you'll see as part of the paper is there are 2 final determinations. One covers 2 officers and the other one covers the third officer who paid the tax liability, which is why they've been issued as 2 separate determinations. The Ombudsman has determined that they weren't aware of the tax liability that they each incurred, and that the service must now pay that tax liability. We are working with our tax experts, PS Tax. They are working directly with HMRC on the determinations. You'll see there's an anticipated set of costs in the paper. PS Tax are working to understand what the exact liability looks like, but I've suggested it could fall within that ballpark figure mentioned in section 3 of the paper. In addition, the Ombudsman required the service to pay a compensation payment of £2,000 each to the 3 individuals. I can confirm that that payment was made shortly after we received the final outcome. So I guess by way of an update, the determinations are attached for your information. These are also public on the Pensions Ombudsman page on the website, so they are available for the public to review. And so we are now, as I said, working with PS Tax to resolve this matter. And that's as much as I wanted to say by way of an update on the case.
No one. Oh, Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Brown are indicating they want to speak.
Right, Wayne.
Yeah, on page sort of 2.12, in paragraph 1.5, this is the bit I can't quite get my head around, is it says, in effect, the 3 individuals retired as whole-time firefighters, took their pensions and any exit costs. But then it says, and continued in their employment. Surely, wouldn't there have been a re-employment contract then as a retained? They wouldn't just automatically sort of transition across. So the tax situation would have been dealt with at that juncture, surely, by HR. Because it looks as if they've just been sort of redeployed there, isn't it? Rather than taking up a new role as a retained firefighter, because the terms and conditions, I assume, would be different.
Right.
Just for clarification, Councillor Hodgins, the individuals had 2 contracts of employment with us at all times. So they were employed as whole-time members of staff under a whole-time contract, but they were also employed as on-call members of staff under an on-call contract, and they only retired from their whole-time contract, not their on-call contract.
Okay, thank you. No, thank you for the clarity. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right, Wayne. Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Having read the report, I mean, I think it's fair enough in view of the fact that they were given notification that it was a tax-free lump sum, when it was sent out to them. So I think they've got a good argument there. I was surprised that there was whole-time duty firefighter contracts and retained duty ones, because I was always under the assumption that the retained duty ones were sort of other members of the community as opposed to whole-time firefighters, and I just wondered what percentage we had of current whole-time firefighters who also were on the retained duty scheme. The other point I noted was that on page 225, it does mention that the individual may retain the benefit of the PPA if they have a break in employment of at least 1 month and the re-employment is materially different. Well, I just wondered if a whole-time firefighter now wanted to, was on the 2 contracts, is it possible then for them to, end both and then a month later come back as a retained duty firefighter? Because, the suggestion in the report is that is the question, and obviously how much we rely on the whole-time firefighters depends on what percentage of them actually have retained firefighter contracts at the same time. Thank you.
Yeah, we have around 30% who have dual contracts, but it's HMRC rules that state there has to be a break-in service so you can't be re-employed directly after retirement in a similar role. So unfortunately, it's not us that kind of make the call. HMRC state there have to be at least a minimum of a month's break-in service before the individual is re-employed. So yes, that would be a way around it, is to stop both contracts and re-employ on a new contract.
But doesn't it say materially different as well? Is that a sticking point?
So I believe that they can.
That's why there's got to be a break, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's why there has to be a clean break.
So, would it be materially different if the break is one thing, but the materially different, if they've got 2 contracts on this thing and then they retire, what I was thinking was that if they have a month's break and then come back as a duty firefighter, is it a materially different because of the break or not, you see, because I think that's worth looking at so that we don't end up falling into this trap again.
Yeah, we can double check that point, but I think as long as there's a break, which is a clean break, they can be re-employed at a later date.
Yeah, because it does say, and the re-employment is materially different. So I think it's worthwhile checking that.
All right, Councillor Brown. I think.
Yeah.
Councillor Brown, I think you made a point. We got an answer back on that. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Who else? I did see one group. Sonny.
Councillor Shaw. Councillor Shaw.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sally. Yeah, this has been a very long, protracted incident, and it's going to be very expensive for the fire service. What I'm looking for really is a reassurance that this has taken place for something that's 5 years old. We have procedures in place to stop its reoccurring.
Yes, Councillor Shaw, we can give you that assurance. Over the last few years, we've put in place our local pension board. We now have membership from our pensions administrator on that board, and we are constantly refreshing our training strategy to make sure we've got the knowledge, skills, in this arena to stop this type of thing happening again in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Roberts is indicating.
Yeah, thank you, Sally. Just to say that I have to leave at this point. I have to leave the meeting. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Sorry.
Councillor Bell-Smith is indicating.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. When I read the report, it's also straightforward and it's also simple and straightforward now, isn't it? Wonderful. We were not the only authority that had an issue with this system, were we? Just to clarify in my mind, we were not the only folks with problems.
That's right, Councillor Smith. We understand there are, so Cheshire was another service that had a similar case, and there may have been others.
Chair, I've got yourself and Councillor Bradwick.
I just want to make the point, this has been a very frustrating period, Rod, for the members who were there at the time. And I can show you there was a lot of sympathy over this case from the members for those three particular individuals. But all the legal advice we had was quite clear. It would be illegal to pay this. That was our big concern. Even the Welsh Audit Office, which is not mentioned here, were of the same opinion. So the members had no option from a legal point of view to make the decision they made. And myself personally was very distraught over it, and I think other members as well. So in a way, it's sorted out now by the Ombudsman. We are now adhering to that. And on the question, will it happen again? We can't. No way can we do this again. As far as we've learned a lesson, full stop. So as far as I'm concerned, the chapter's closed. The three of those, as far as they're concerned, they've got what they feel they deserve, and that's, to me, is the end of the issue as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Clarified it.
Councillor Bradwick was indicating.
Yes, thank you, Sally. Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo what the Chair just said. You know, I had many sleepless nights over this over quite a long time, and it's been horrendous for the staff involved. And as Tudor just said, the legal advice we were given, and yes, it's other fire authorities. We're not the only one, so we're not just us to blame. There's quite a few fire authorities up there, and I think HMRC needs to get their act together and really give proper advice out there. Thank you.
Sonny, I think it was a matter of interpretation what the regulations were, and unfortunately, a lot of us, not of us, but a lot of services didn't get it correct, and that's a lesson at the end of the day.
That's correct, Tudor. That's correct, Tudor.
Councillor Shaw's indicating again.
Yeah, very briefly, if I may. Yeah, thank you. I absolutely agree that as a principle, the authority shouldn't be paying tax liabilities of individuals. But, it is what it is, I suppose. Thank you for all that. Can I also say I too have to leave the meeting now, but thank you all very much. Bye-bye.
And we'll miss you, Rod, right? I like your beard. It's getting bigger and bigger, right? All right,
Thank
then.
you all. Bye-bye.
Could I then move the recommendation? Is that seconded? That we note the report?
Yes, I second that, Chair, yes.
All right.
Can I take a vote on it? Yes, please, because not everyone's got cameras on. Councillor Alley?
In favour.
Councillor Bradwick?
In favour.
Councillor Brown?
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand? Councillor Colbrand?
Yeah, in favour. Sorry, I wouldn't unmute, but in favour.
Councillor Davies?
Yes, I agree.
Councillor Drake?
In favour.
Councillor Ibrahim?
In favour, and apologies, I have to often mute the sound and the camera because I can't hear clearly, so that's why I'm switching on and off.
That's fine, don't worry. Councillor Evans?
In favour.
Councillor Hodgins? Councillor Hodgins? Has he gone?
Seems to have left, Sal.
He's gone. Okay. Councillor Hussey?
In favour.
Councillor Jarvie?
In favour.
Councillor Jones?
In favour.
Councillor Lister?
In favour.
Councillor Norton?
In favour.
Councillor Smith?
In favour.
Councillor Spencer?
In favour.
Councillor Thomas?
Favour.
And Councillor White?
In favour.
That was unanimous as well.
Thank you. Right, we go to the next item with 7.2, Strategic Risk Register Report Quarter for the fourth quarter, 2019-20. That's page 235. Sally?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll try and be brief on this one. This is your end of quarter four strategic risk register. You'll notice on page 237 that a new strategic risk for COVID-19 has been added. The scoring is at the end of March, when obviously things were just starting to ramp up. That scoring has come down subsequently because of the control measures that we've put in place. You'll see a high-level summary of each of the strategic risks on page 238, and then a bit more detail on the following pages. I don't propose to go through each risk in turn, as members will have already had an opportunity to read these, but I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions?
No.
I'm happy with the report.
Can't see anyone, no.
Well, I move we note the report. Is that seconded?
Yes, seconded.
Yeah, thirded.
Okay, so Councillor Alley?
In favour.
Councillor Bradwick?
In favour.
Councillor Brown?
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand?
In favour.
Councillor Davies?
In favour.
Councillor Drake?
In favour.
Councillor Ibrahim?
In favour.
Councillor Evans?
In favour.
Councillor Hodgins? He's still gone. Councillor Hussey?
In favour.
Councillor Jarvie?
In favour.
Councillor Jones?
In favour.
Councillor Lister?
In favour.
Councillor Norton? Councillor Smith?
In favour.
Councillor Spencer?
Yes, in favour.
Councillor Thomas?
In favour.
Councillor White?
In favour.
Thank
you. Right, then we go to item 7.3, end of the year health check on performance and strategic objectives 2019-20. Sally's taking the first part of it on strategic objectives.
Yep, so there's two parts to this paper. First of all, the performance against the strategic themes. Second part, you will have received separately, apologies, it was missed off from the report, a second appendice which includes the statutory PIs, which Dowie will talk to. We will send each member their own table for their own unitary authority of the statutory PIs so that you can circulate that with your home authorities. Just for note, these are obviously end of Q4 reports. So on the first part of the report, the performance against the strategic themes, obviously there's just the 5 strategic themes that we're reporting against because this was our strategic plan that ended 31st of March. You'll be aware, obviously, we've now got the 8 strategic themes for 2020 to 2030, which we've referenced on page 205 of the agenda. A summary of where we are with our strategic theme performance is on page 272, and a bit more detail on the following pages as to what action has taken place for each of the themes. You'll notice that there are a couple of items that are red on our dashboard, which show that things haven't progressed as we would have wanted them to. Some of those are linked to capacity, such as redesigning our intranet site. Others are linked to obviously the environment that we now find ourselves in. So, for example, the 10 pump exercises we're not able to undertake at the current time. There are also a number of amber objectives that we would have hoped to have completed by the end of the year, but again, some of these have had to be put on hold because of the COVID situation, but they've rolled forward into objectives for the current year. I wasn't going to go through each priority action and the work undertaken for each in turn because members will have read that already, but happy to take any questions on this first part of the paper. Councillor Jarvie has indicated.
Thank you. It's not a question on this item. I simply want to say that I have to leave the meeting now because I have a funeral to attend. So with your permission, I shall withdraw. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no other people indicating questions. So, Dowie, do you want to go through the performance indicator targets?
Good afternoon, members. There was a brief summary on page 269 of the 7 national strategic performance indicators we report on. I'll just quickly go through them. The one indicator did not meet the target last year and performed worse was special service calls attended. There was one indicator did not meet the target, however, but was in 0 to 5% of the target and did perform better than last year. That was our attendance at false alarms. And one indicator did not meet the target, but was in between 0 and 5% of the target and did perform slightly worse, was our percentage of dwelling fires confined to the room of origin. The 4 other targets, total fires attended, total road traffic collisions attended, total deaths and injuries in fires, accidental deaths and injuries in fires, all performed and achieved their targets. The summary is on the, as Sally outlined, is on the separate appendices that was supplied to you. Appendix 1, it gives a summary of those 7 performance indicators and a bit of background to that. It also gives a summary of each unitary authority performance. In addition to that, there's a 1-page pictogram with the performance of the service over the last 12 months as Appendix 2. So that gives a good idea for each member of the performance of the services as a whole and their unitary authority areas. Within the detail of the unitary authority areas, it also outlines some of the work that's going on to increase our performance and the preventative work and activity in each of the unitary authority areas.
I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions? Can I move? We note that report then. Is that seconded?
Second, Matthew.
Right. Sally?
Okay, Councillor Ali. Councillor Ali.
In favour.
Councillor Bradwick.
I'll have to abstain again, Sally, because I lost part of what Debbie was saying, so there's something wrong with this Starleaf thing again. Okay, thanks, sorry
Councillor
about that.
Brown.
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand.
In favour.
Councillor Davies.
Agree.
Councillor Drake.
Agreed.
Councillor Ibrahim.
Agreed.
Councillor Evans.
Agreed.
Councillor Hussey.
Agreed.
Councillor Jones. We've lost Councillor Jones, have we? Right, we can hear you, just. Councillor Lister.
Agree.
Councillor Norton.
Yes, agreed.
Councillor Smith.
Agree.
Councillor Spencer.
Yes, agree.
Councillor Thomas.
Agree.
Councillor White.
Agreed.
Again, that was unanimous.
Right, then we go on to the next item then on 7.4, the Welsh Language Standards Update to June 2020 on page 281. Welcome back, Alison.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, members. So this report provides members with an overview of how the service is doing against the Welsh language standards. These have been set for public bodies in Wales. You will see that we are currently reporting 7 standards where we're in amber and 1 in the red category. We've assessed our performance in these areas, and just to flag, you will notice that those in the amber category are either in progress through awaiting translation, or there's a couple in there that are awaiting publication of our equality risk assessment. So I think overall the amber category are in progress and are moving along. The one that's in the red category, this relates to translation of information in real time, essentially. So why we've assessed this one as red is because we are quite visible, we're quite active on social media, and to ensure that both mediums, so Welsh and English, have equal parity, if you like, is quite often difficult for us if we are in a dynamic situation and we want to communicate. To get that communication translated into Welsh is not something that's done necessarily in real time. So that's the explanation around why that one a standard is being recorded as in the red category. Other than that, everything else is green. So happy to take any questions on that.
Chair, if I could just add on the red section, our corporate, it's linked to our social media accounts. Our corporate accounts are our official social media accounts. We do simultaneously in Welsh and English. The problem that we have is in relation to our station and departmental accounts that are much more interactive and dynamic with events that are going on in the community at the time. We did put an application into the Welsh Language Commissioner to seek an exemption for our station Facebook pages and social media accounts to enable us to put out in English only, but that application was refused.
Thank you, Sally.
And just one other point as well, for future reports, we'll change how the colour coding works because it's very difficult to see the difference between the amber and the red. So we'll pick that up for the next meeting.
I raised that with Sally earlier on because it was very confusing. I don't know what colour we're going to put on there. We'll have to have a competition from the members, I think. Anyone got any questions on this matter to Alison? If not, can I move that we note the report? Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Right, Sally?
Okay, Councillor Ali? In favour? Councillor Bradwick?
In favour, sorry.
Councillor Brown?
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand?
In favour.
Councillor Davies?
Yes.
Councillor Drake?
In favour.
Councillor Ibrahim?
In favour.
Councillor Evans?
In favour.
Councillor Hussey?
In favour.
Councillor Jones?
In favour.
Councillor Lister?
In favour.
Councillor Norton?
Yes, I'm in support. In favour.
Councillor Smith?
In favour.
Councillor Spencer?
In favour.
Councillor Thomas?
In favour.
Councillor White?
In favour.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Right, we go to item 7.5, which is a forward programme for the Fire Authority for 2020-21, page 335. Sally?
Yeah, this is just for members' information. Obviously, it's got the core reports that you need as an authority during the municipal year, but we'll add additional items on as members request it or as other items come up for discussion.
Right, that's for information. Okay, we won't take a vote on that one. Right, there's no items of business that been submitted to me under the part 1 and 2 of the on page 341. Right, we're going to go back now to 6.4, and the officers now are going to be.
Chairman will leave the meeting, and Chris
is going to take over.
Will take over. Chris, can you let us know when you've finished as well for the agenda meeting after?
Yeah, we'll do. We'll do.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyway, thank the officers who are departing us. Thank you for your attendance. Wish you all
members.
the best.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Chair. Cheers, members. Take care.
All the best.
Turning that off now.
Right, we're talking about the South Wales Fire and Rescue Authority Vehicles Lease Scheme, which is on page 193. Chris, you're going to take over.
Okay, yeah, I'm just checking that they've all signed out, Chair, so that we're good to go. I believe they have.
Right.
Okay, before we start, Chair, there's one typographical error on the report that I just wanted to draw members' attention to. It's on page 198, and it's on the top, paragraph 3.51, and it refers to paragraph 2.55, and it should be 2.54.
Thank you for that, Chris. I do read my minutes.
Just a clarity, yes. Thank you, Chair, for that one. Just in terms of a few housekeeping points, I am trying to present this report and do all the admin and everything, so if you could bear with me on that basis. As you've already have noted, as I said at the beginning of the agenda, the senior managers and officers of the authority have withdrawn for this item. It's regarding the South Wales Fire Authority vehicle lease scheme. The senior grey book officers within the service have access to this scheme, and some indeed are members of the scheme, but also officers who are deemed to require cars who are also green book also have access to the scheme, and therefore theoretically, whether they have cars or not, could benefit from the provisions of it, which is why they've withdrawn as well. So the purposes of this item, I'm presenting the report, and I do not have access to the scheme, which is why I'm able to present. Just on a point of detail before I launch into the report as well. Clearly, the nature of the report deals with the terms and conditions of specific individuals within the service, and it also refers to discussions with the rep bodies as well. We'll present the report in as a Part 1 agenda item. Should members raise any questions that are of a personal or confidential nature in respect of the scheme, then we might have to proceed to Part 2 in order to deal with that matter confidentially. Clearly, we can't have discussions about confidential matters in a public meeting. So I will kind of stop you if we get into a discussion of any of those type of issues. So in terms of the report itself, just to give members a bit of background, it's around 20 years since the detail of this scheme was formally dealt with by a fire authority meeting, and subsequent to that it's been dealt with by a number of minor amendments and changes that have gone through various guises and rep body discussions and so on. In essence, the scheme is about providing senior grey book officers, so that's station manager, group manager, area manager, directors and the chief fire officer in the grey book cadre, and also green book officers who have the ability to access the scheme with a vehicle that enables them to perform their business. Now, the particular issues in this report are mainly around the grey book members of staff. These are members of staff who are on call. They need to respond to emergency incidents in an efficient and effective manner. They need to carry their own kit and equipment in the vehicle in order to perform those duties. And accordingly, they require a vehicle. The critical point about it is whether or not there was a lease scheme or not, they would still require a vehicle in order to perform those duties. If we didn't run a lease scheme, then we would end up providing them with a service vehicle for that purpose anyway, in order to perform those duties. So that's kind of the background to why we've got a scheme in the first place. And it's been determined in the past that the operation of an effective lease scheme is more cost effective than the provision of vehicles which we would have to provide as pool vehicles, with all the consequential administration and arrangements that would entail in moving these vehicles around between the officers as they require them. So that's why the scheme was brought in originally. In terms of the way it works, the essence of the scheme financially is that the fire authority has approved a contribution that it would make towards the cost of the provision of that vehicle. If an employee chooses to take a vehicle that costs more than that amount, then the employee makes good the extra finance required to purchase the vehicle. So the employee effectively pays for the additional cost of any vehicle above the basic vehicles that we look at. And then the employee pays all fuel for the vehicle, and they claim back any business mileage that they then incur in order to recover the fuel costs of business trips. That's the essence of the way the scheme works. As the scheme is currently configured, the basic amount that was set 20 years ago was a contribution from the fire authority of around £2,000, just over £2,000 to a basic leaseholder. Now, as you can imagine, that was set at a time when car prices were substantially less than they are now. It was set based on the likely lease cost of a typical vehicle you would need to provide to an officer who needed to respond to the types of emergency incidents we're talking about for the grey book officers. So you're talking about not a very small car. Clearly, you have to carry kit in it. It has to be capable of being driven at speed on blue lights and so on. And basically, it needs to be a suitable vehicle, and the determined cost of that vehicle around that time was around £2,000 per annum on a lease. Now, clearly, 20 years has eroded, and we've ended up in a situation where quotes for those vehicles, those similar vehicles today, are kind of well over £3,000 a year. So what has happened is there's been no inflationary provision put on the fire authority contribution, and effectively, as time's gone on, officers have been contributing a greater and greater proportion of the cost of the vehicle, and the fire authority effectively providing a lesser and lesser amount of the cost of the vehicle. Why does that matter, you might say? Why don't we just continue that arrangement? It's financially cost effective for the fire authority. Well, what we're seeing over that period is the numbers of people opting for the lease cars is starting to reduce, and we are having to provide them with provided vehicles, which is a higher cost to the fire authority. So it's important that we try and keep this as a sustainable and cost-effective provision, and we don't end up with officers effectively saying, well, it's okay, I won't take a lease car, you can provide me with a car at your full cost, and effectively you can run it, look after it, and I won't take any ownership for it whatsoever. So that's why it's important from that point of view. But there's another issue that has arisen starting from April this year, and we've been in discussion with the HMRC around this, and that is the taxation rules around these emergency vehicles have changed. HMRC recognises that there needs to be a special status around the vehicles because they're not just a kind of typical company car. These vehicles have to have blue lights, sirens and so on fitted to them, and they have to be driven accordingly. And HMRC recognise, therefore, that it is sensible that when the fire authority provides these vehicles to people, that they should be able to keep these vehicles with them most of the time, so that if they are on call and they do get a phone call saying they need to attend an incident, they've got a vehicle with them that is suitably made. It's got all their kit in the back and it's got blues and twos on it so they can respond immediately, as opposed to saying, well, actually, I'll just have to drive home or drive to a fire station, pick up another vehicle and then make the trip to the incident. So HMRC recognises that, and they put in place specific tax provisions around the Grey Book scheme, therefore. The provisions for that changed, however. HMRC changed the rules, and what we've ended up with is a situation where we have to change the payment provisions to our employees, which has further detrimented employees. We have a situation where, at the moment, employees who are on call can claim up to 25 miles of freedom of movement. That is, they can take the vehicle with them when they're on personal business, but they are still on duty to respond to calls. And also when they're commuting between different places, they can also claim an element of that as well. Those payments are liable to cease from this year, because if we continue to pay them, then effectively staff of the service will end up being taxed on all mileage that they do, whether it be personal, whether it be private, and clearly that's not a situation that individuals will wish to essentially see happen, and it will further detriment the scheme and the continued use of the scheme. So that taxation change has forced us to look at an alternative provision. And what we've done essentially is we've gone out and we've undertaken a few exercises to look at what does it cost the fire authority currently? What do other fire authorities pay? How does HMRC facilitate these schemes and changes within the taxation arrangements? And brought this paper back to you with a series of suggestions that would address the points that have been raised and the issues that I've just mentioned. If I start with benchmarking of the scheme to give you an idea of what other people are doing. We've looked at the surrounding authorities. Obviously, we've got two other authorities in Wales, but other surrounding authorities as well in close proximity. In all cases, those authorities actually pay substantially more towards the cost of the vehicles under their schemes than South Wales currently pays under the basic scheme here. So we're paying currently just over £2,000. Most of the others are £3,000 and upwards in terms of the cost of their schemes. So on a comparability basis, we look to be well below the levels which other people are paying to keep their officers in these suitably leased and operated cars. The other thing we looked at was the various rates of inflation that are applicable to vehicle purchases over the period. So since 2000, when the scheme was last addressed, there's 20 years of inflation effectively. And on page 196 of the report, you'll see there's a small table there that shows you the impact of various types of inflation on those figures over that period. And you'll see that CPI has increased 47% over that period, RPI has increased 67% over that period, and NJC grade book salary settlements have increased 48% over that period. And you can see all of those also push the equivalent figure up well over £3,000. So again, it kind of ties in with the benchmarking exercise that we did that shows the cost of these vehicles is now well over £3,000, and we're again behind the curve in terms of the level of provision which we're currently offering to staff. And the rep bodies have picked this up, and they've requested that we look at this in terms of whether or not there's an more appropriate sum that we would provide as the basis for the scheme going forward. Essentially, what we therefore come up with is a series of recommendations. They do have cost implications, but I think it's important to stress that not doing anything also has a cost implication if people start voting with their feet and leaving the scheme or end up with a total pool vehicle provision. So what I've done, I've set out against each of the items that we're recommending in section 3 of the report, starting on page 197, the individual suggestion that we're putting forward in this report together with the cost implication of it. In terms of the first one, there is a minimum employee contribution payment currently written into the scheme. It requires officers to pay a minimum of £804 towards the cost of a vehicle, regardless of the vehicle they choose. Now, essentially, this is a bit of an anathema to me. I'm not quite sure why it was put in the first place. It would seem unreasonable to suggest that if somebody chooses a cheaper, more cost-effective car, we would seek to charge them more for it than somebody who chose a more expensive car. So we're suggesting that as a minor change to the scheme, we remove that minimum contribution requirement. It only affects a few people within the service currently because of the existing cost of vehicles. And it would cost the Fire Authority around £2,000 per annum, we assess, to actually lose that element of the scheme. In terms of the maintenance arrangements for the vehicles, currently, because of the last taxation system, we actually split the contributions that employees made to the lease scheme. They paid partially towards the maintenance and partially towards the lease cost. What we're suggesting is we now change that. We've had discussions with HMRC through our tax advisors, PS Tax, and they are happy that if we change these arrangements to put a single contribution in place now towards the overall cost of the lease, that it will be tax compliant. However, the loss of the current contributions for maintenance will cost the authority £27,000. So it's important to recognise that for members. Paragraph 3.4, which is the next point, is the issue I mentioned about officers' taxation on their mileage. The removal of the 50-mile freedom of movement and on-call commute payments. So this is where effectively we are suggesting that we increase the employer contribution by £380 per annum. However, what that will do, it will pay officers slightly more money, but they will lose the ability to claim mileage. So it's a cost-neutral adjustment for the Fire Authority. The overall cost of it is about £24,000, but we will save £24,000 by not paying them mileage allowances. So whilst that's a change we're recommending, it's a cost-neutral change to the Fire Authority itself. The fourth element is the RPI element, which is a suggestion, and it is only a suggestion, that we increase the RPI figure by £500 per annum. Now, it's kind of a round lump sum, effectively. It would cost about £33,000 in total for that particular item. So that's the four elements of the scheme in terms of the financial impact. The overall summary of that is shown in paragraph 3.6. So the changes recommended would increase costs by £86,000, but it would be offset by the savings to mileage allowance of £24,000, resulting in a net cost to the authority of £62,000. And obviously, it would be a part-year effect this year. There would only be a £36,000 effect this year because we're only implementing from the 1st of September if you approve the changes. I think the key point to focus on in this is perhaps in paragraph 3.63 of the report. So you'll see there The basic amount of our current scheme is £2,115, and as I've mentioned, that's well below the cost of the provision of equivalent vehicles in 2020. If we made the changes that are recommended, what you would see is that for Green Book staff, that 2115 would increase to 2615. For station managers and group managers, that 15 would increase to just under 3,000 at 2995. But for area managers, directors and chief fire officer, we're recommending no increase in their current allowances. So you'll see from that table that even with all the adjustments that we're making to the scheme, the figure that we're recommended is as an employee contribution rate for the basic level of contribution is still under £3,000 for most people, and therefore still within the realms of the RPI increases we previously discussed. And also it's on the lower end, if not the lowest, of the comparable authorities that we looked at and the benchmark. So we think that it's a reasonable amount of money to suggest in terms of an overall contribution figure for the basic lease level. And that's the basis on which the recommendations have been put forward, Chair. The one final thing I'd mention is Councillor Shaw mentioned the kind of green aspect of this and the carbon reduction aspect of it. For Green Book staff, their tax treatment is very similar to anyone else with a company car. So there's already significant incentives for people to take fuel-efficient cars. Effectively, they're in a position where if they choose a high CO2 car, they are taxed more than if they choose a low CO2 car. So for the Green Book staff, that incentive is there through the taxation system anyway. For the other officers, it is a difficult one. As I think Hugh mentioned, we do require officers to respond often with limited notice, and therefore the opportunities at the moment for taking, say, an electric car are not great, given that you need to have the vehicle charged and so on. But I think looking forward, there is clearly scope to look at how we might include those types of provisions in the lease scheme from here on. The intention following this report is to actually amend the lease scheme document to reflect any changes that you approve today, and we intend to bring that document back to the HR committee to actually consider the lease scheme in its entirety and agree effectively a final kind of document which we can take forward from here on. The other minor recommendation in there, which I think is important going forward, is that the report seeks your approval that we would increase these allowances from here on by the same rate as the Grey Book salary increase. So each year we would inflate these figures so we don't get to a situation where several years down the line we are again hugely out of step with the marketplace for the conditions of the scheme, and we end up with another type of report like this, which is looking for a large uplift over 20 years. So the recommendations are before you, Chair, to remove the minimum payment criteria from the scheme, to increase the allowance by £380 per annum to reflect the reduction in mileage allowances available to those staff, to base the lease contributions on the vehicle lease cost to the service and not the maintenance cost, to actually put an RPI increase of £500 in place for staff who are on the scheme, and also to link these rates in future to the Grey Book salary increases going forward. And at that point, I'm going to stop talking, Chair, and I'm sure there are questions that members might have in terms of the scheme that they might.
Well done, Chris. You've done your homework on that very well. All right, Chris. Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Right.
Councillor David White, I've got.
Yeah.
How often do they use the scheme of the cars for emergencies?
Okay, the Grey Book staff, obviously, every time they're on shift effectively, they are on call, David. So, I mean, I haven't got statistical information that would say that they use the car every day, but every time they're required to respond, they will be using the vehicle. So you have the most senior managers are on continuous duty, so effectively they are on response all the time if they're required. The station managers, group managers, cadre will obviously be on call when they're on shift and on cover.
As far as I understood,
sorry, Dave, go on.
As far as I
Go on,
understand,
Dave.
it's for emergency work, and I don't have an issue with it. Thank you, Chair.
Who was that?
Councillor Louise Brown.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. It was really a question about 4.1 and the employees' contribution as opposed to the employer contributions. When it says it removes that, I mean, presumably there will be some employee contribution, because although the vehicles might be used on an emergency basis, they're also there available for members on a private basis as well. So there is some benefit there. The second question is, why is RPI used rather than CPI? Because CPI is something that tends to be used now with local government pensions and so forth, as opposed to RPI, which is obviously quite a bit more expensive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes, Chair. On both of those, just to clarify on that removal of the minimum member contribution, the way it works, Councillor Brown, is if you approve these rates in the report, effectively that is the cap on which the Fire Authority contribution is based. So if an employee chooses a more expensive vehicle than that, they will pay the difference. So the Fire Authority doesn't pick that up.
Okay.
The minimum criteria just said that you had a strange situation that if under the current if you approve these and we have a contribution level of 2,995 for the station manager, say, and they went and bought a car which only cost 2,895, they would still end up having to pay £804 towards that vehicle, even though it was not costing any more than the lease scheme approval. So it was it was catching people who were effectively trying to be cost effective. They were trying to choose less expensive cars, but still ended up having to pay quite a sizable contribution towards them. And we say it only
going for dearer cars because of it, effectively.
Effectively, yes. If you were faced with a Fire Authority contribution of 2,995 and you had to pay £804 per annum, well, what would you do? You'd choose a car which cost 3,700, would you, to get the full value out of it? That seems a slightly perverse incentive within the scheme. So that's why we've recommended removal of that particular provision. But make no mistake, employees would still pay any excess over the approved amount that the Fire Authority is due to pay. On the other point, on the other point, on the RPI CPI Chair, we're not recommending the use of either of those, Councillor Brown. We put both in the report just to give comparative data to show that the CPI gives us a lower figure. You're right, at £3,111 comparator. Effectively, we've gone with the figure of a base increase of £500. It brings us slightly below that CPI figure. So even using the CPI, we're still marginally lower than that figure. But you're right, the CPI is a lower figure than the RPI.
So what you're saying is that the 500 was to bring it up to levels because we haven't done it, but you're recommending that from now on you use RPI rather than CPI.
No, Chair, just to clarify that. So you're right on the first point. Yes, we just recommended a lump sum effectively of £500 to bring it up to the sort of levels that we're talking about. Going forward, what we want to link it to is the NJC pay award for staff. So it'll be whatever the National Joint Council agree as the uplift on pay awards for employees for their pay. We would also reflect that in the lease scheme as well. So not using RPI, not using CPI, using their pay.
Okay, thank you.
Which is sensible. Someone else got their hand up there? No?
Yeah.
Councillor Val Smith.
Yes, if I may please, Jim. Your little table, the area manager, directors and chief fire officer were saying everything is fine because that scheme was also organised at the same time. So we are happy with the arrangements for those officers and not looking sort of in the few months to having to reappraise that situation.
No, Chair, there are seniority arrangements in place. So the values for the lease scheme are actually slightly higher for those officers in the first place. So we're recommending they stay as they are. We're not recommending they get any increase as a result of this.
All right, Val?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman.
Anyone else? I think it's long overdue when you look at the figures, and I think we've missed out some years ago, but we are where we are. I'm going to move the recommendations.
Okay, Chair, I will need to take a record of the vote.
I'll second, Chair.
I'm going to take the recommendations 4.1 to 4.5.
Okay.
That's seconded.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I
all take it down then, Chris, on the vote?
Yeah. Can I ask you to indicate then? Please make sure you're not on mute. If you've got yourself on mute, Councillor Ali.
In favour.
Councillor Bradwick.
In favour.
Councillor Brown.
In favour.
Councillor Colbrand.
In favour.
Councillor Davis.
In favour.
Councillor Drake.
In favour.
Councillor Ibrahim.
In favour, but I have to leave this time. Just to send my apology to the rest of the meeting.
Thank you for staying. It's the last item anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Evans, if he's still on. Councillor Hodgkins, I think, didn't come back. Councillor Hussey.
In favour.
Councillor Jones. I think Councillor Jones may have left. Councillor Lister.
In favour.
Councillor Norton.
In favour.
Councillor Smith.
In favour.
Councillor Spencer.
In favour.
Councillor Thomas.
In favour.
Councillor White.
In favour.
Thank you very much.
Chris. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, members. Nice to see you all again. And thanks for staying the course.
I gotta go because we've got another meeting waiting.
I know you are, right. I can't join you, Steve, unfortunately.
All right.